Okay, so Succession Kuno's gotten enough changes to the point where I feel like I can make a video and talk about everything that's happened. Um, and we finally got some meaningful changes in this most recent patch. Not to say we didn't get meaningful changes before, but I feel like we now actually have good stuff to talk about, really, more than just, the ghost at full iframe here. But I'm going to go over all the changes. This is Succession only, but I will talk about some of the base Kuno changes that, will affect Awakening, such as the ghost at being full iframe here and lasting longer. And that is the first change. The iframe, there's no more SA on Ghost Step. It's all iframe, and I believe it lasts a little bit longer than what is currently on live, so it's more protections in general, because, yeah, it lasts a little bit longer, and it's all iframe, so you just completely avoid all damage, grabs, or whatever it may be. It's very nice. Now, I could be wrong. It could just be like, I don't have as much attack speed or movement speed, because, when I Poppy's buffed, it does feel closer to live, but I'm still inclined to believe it's still slightly longer. But I'm sure somebody else can confirm or deny that. Either way, full iframe, very strong. Block jump got slightly changed. You see those little logs? You can now teleport to either of those logs. Early on, it used to be iframe, like you would sit in the block jump a little bit longer, and then they changed the concealment, and then they just kind of removed it. So you just kind of teleport to those things. If you have the concealment buff up, which I'll go ahead and get here, it still keeps you in concealment, but it doesn't put you in concealment. You have to have the buff up. Shadow Clone, whether Prime or ABS version, Absolute version, is now usable via SRMB, like that. And you can now cancel into Stomp with it. It also applies the damage all around you, just to show what I mean. Actually, be better if I do it here so you can actually see. um, they lowered the amount of SA you have because there's no linger anymore. And they gave it crit rate in PvE. It's just so instead of only PvP, it's just now 100% crit rate. Yeah. They also lowered the cooldown from 13 seconds down to 10. That doesn't make up for the lack of linger, though, in my opinion. Um, yeah, stomp cancel in case you wanted to see that. Smoke screen is now the default cancel after stomp when you use spacebar. So if you hold it, you smoke conceal. On concealment is now iframe. Whenever you enter concealment, whether it's Oni Shadow, smoke screen concealment, or Sinew Cut, it's iframe. So, this lets you basically still maintain protections after fishing for stomps without having to use Shadow Clone. I don't know if I like it more necessarily, especially now that clone's a lower cooldown. I still wish it was clone after stomp and that it worked like clone does on live currently because you have the linger there. But yeah, it helps for like faster movement, I guess. So, um, they added stomp cancels after fatal blow or hard aiming. Works like that pretty much. And they lowered the cooldown of fatal blow from 7 seconds to 4 seconds. I don't know why. I wish they'd change the flow to match, but it's whatever. Really, I mean, these are combo tools. I mean, you'll fatal blow in PvE a little bit, maybe to finish off mobs or get the back attack damage, because fatal blow with the flow in the back is like your highest DPS, or at least it was, not anymore, which I'll get to later. But the AOE is still small and everything. I think it's just there for like combo ability. Um, yeah, hard aiming is now 20-second cooldown instead of 27. I still think 20 is like silly. It's still really long, but it helps. And you can now hard aiming even when it's on cooldown. So every time you shadow fatal, it'll more or less be the same. It's just it'll do less damage. But yeah, good change. Tendon cutter. This is where things get kind of crazy because they've done a lot over the few patches. One, you can now use tendon cutter. Hold up. Whatever. Let me just make sure this is still working. Yeah, okay. You can now tendon cutter via WQ. And if you hold W, it'll move you forward without having to do all the camera nonsense. So, bad kunos rejoice. You can now move forward with tendon cutter without having to actually be good. It's also faster. And it cancels things. So if I like ankle into tendon, it's a lot of movement. Very quick. I want to say it's like 10% faster from live. They also changed the crit rate for tendon to be 100% in PvE. So now, you know, if you tap the keys, it'll still do normal tendon cutter, but it'll do a lot of damage. Or, well, more than it used to by a lot. Good stuff. Jump kunai throw is now like a big AOE for pulling mobs. It doesn't feel good to use, I'm gonna be honest. It's not terrible, it's just it feels terrible when you play like a Mewa and you just, you know, use your shout and it hits all these mobs. Or a Lan who literally just presses Q and can spam it and there's no cooldown and it pulls everything. It's cool. Like, it looks so cool. But I kind of wish it was just the base kunai throw that did that. That would feel so much better. Especially with, like, you know, all the moving kunai throws that you can do. But it's a step in the right direction for sure, and it helps grinding. It is worth noting that the stiff and the slows only apply to whoever you actually hit the kunai with. So, like, I have to hit him to stiff. See? Foxclaw is now spammable, and the damage comes out during the animation rather than after. If you've ever played Kuno, you obviously know how it feels on live, that the extra damage comes out after you finish the animation. So it was very awkward to use. And if you ever like try to cancel it too early, you would only ever get just like the hit damage and not the extra hit damage, which is laughably low. They changed that. They also added 50% PvE crit. So, yeah. However, it is currently bugged, so if I use this and try and hold it, it takes a long ass time to do the second Foxclaw. But if I just hardcast it, it spams a little bit better. Yeah, this just makes double Fox a little stronger, I guess, but you can't do it in a lot of combos. Like, you can't kick Fox either and like use it twice or anything. However, these like attack speed changes and stuff that they've done, it flows better with other skills like Wheel or Fatal Blow or whatever else you might want to do. So you could do like, okay, well, if you're good, you could. I'm not, clearly. But you get the point. Your combos flow a little faster. It feels a little bit better. Good stuff. Grab cooldown is now 15 seconds, but it's SA on success. This goes for all classes. All classes got grab cooldown increases. You know, going from 10 to 15 is not terrible for a Kuno, but the SA on success is huge. This means you can grab in your large-scale, small-scale fights to maintain protections. That's insane. You will feel the increase in cooldown in 1v1s, but it's not like the end of the world. You'll be fine. But classes that had like 7-second cooldowns are now 15. 15 is like the lowest grab cooldown. So, you know, all the warriors you hate fighting who literally just always have grab up, they don't anymore. So, yeah, I like the cooldown change. I think it's good and healthy for the game overall. I don't like the SA on success. I feel like that's too strong, especially with how fast they made our grab. Now you're gonna like a lot of times extend your grab just for the extra super armor, I feel like. But we'll see. You only do that if you're tanky. If not, you'll just use the fast one. Flash Slash. Oh boy, they've done a lot to this skill. This is where they've given us super armor damage, at least some. They've increased the attack speed. They've doubled the damage by having the stiff actually apply damage. So if you go look at Flash, you know, you see max 2 hits now instead of 1652 times 5. It's 652 times 5 with 2 hits. The reason for that is the stiffness now applies damage. So, and you'll see the attack speed increase here when I use it. Okay. Never mind. God damn it. I made a new kuno, so I'd have the 63 version for reasons I'll go over later. But yeah, also the cooldown is 9 seconds. See, now boom, very very quick, and the stiff applies damage. So it's essentially double damage from live. That's really 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 big. This means you can use flash as super armor damage. Now if you take the teleports, it's still slower. It doesn't come. I mean, it's still faster, but it's not as fast. But it's still very crazy good for the extra iframes. So, yeah, flash it's very very strong, and that the 9 second cooldown is only for prime, not absolute. I think that's a good change. You need something to separate the two, and I think they've done a really good job here. Yeah, it's just really really strong skill now in terms of damage and utility. The lower cooldown, I'm very happy with it. Shackles. Shackles got a total of 40% damage buff overall because it had 5 hits. They added 2 hits, so it now hits pretty hard. There's no accuracy, so you're still not going to use it against evasion, but yeah, against DR, which most people are, it's very good. And you can also see the cooldown is now 12 seconds instead of 20, which is huge. ABS is still the same, just so you know. So Prime Shackles actually feels like a Prime skill now instead of what it is on live, which is not good. Explosion, Shadow Explosion, is now a 9 second cooldown from 16 on live. Not only that, but they got rid of the pushback in PvE, so it no longer pushes mobs, and they gave it 100% PvE crit rate from 25. It used to only have 25%. That's essentially a 75% damage increase for PvE. You could argue that it's not because you have extra crit rate from add-ons and stuff, which is true, but it just hits harder, a lot harder now. It still has split damage for whatever reason, and they still didn't give it SA, which is what I want, but they've given us SA and other skills, or SA damage and other skills, and I'll go over the other skill here in a second. But yeah, Tendon Cutter also got 100% PvE crit rate. It actually feels like it does damage. Yeah. Now, they've also added other ways to get runes. If I Foxclaw, I get a rune. If I Tendon Cutter, I get a rune. Spirit and Ghost, respectively, I think. Or that's Spirit and that's Ghost. So with the lower cooldowns to Clone and Explosion, the added runes from Fox and Tendon Cutter, you basically get runes all the time. It's very easy. They did not change the 2 runes at all. So Stomp is still a 50% damage buff. This is still a shitty bleed, and Clone is still a shitty heal. They did touch the 3 rune releases, which I'll go over, well, right now, actually. I'll go over the base skills first, because they modified them. This got a massive damage increase. Massive. It was 924 times 4. It's now 1288 times 8. It's huge. The PvP damage, I believe, is like double or more. So you can use this in combos now. You can use it as SA damage to engage on somebody. If you see a Zerker cannon somebody down to the ground, you jump on them with Dance, and then you can flash and just bop, and then or bomb or something to get the hell out. It's very strong in damage. It feels really really good to use. The one thing I'm not happy with it is that it's very difficult to use it in melee range. You have to be like very very quick with your camera turns and your little reticle to actually be able to use it as melee, like super armor damage. It's very very hard. Maybe if I lowered my settings and had a higher frame rate, I could do it, but probably not right now. So it's a good engage from a distance. It's very strong super armor damage. Yeah, the release, they added 2 extra hits. The PvP damage on the release is the same. So it's only PvE where this does damage. It still does damage. It just does the buff was for the release was only for PvE and not PvP. Wheel of Wrath. Wheel of Wrath got a damage nerf on the base wheel without the release. They lowered the hits, but upped the wait. No, am I tripping? I'm tripping, right? Hold on, let me go look at the numbers just to be absolutely sure. The fact that I have to look is kind of sad, to be honest. um, okay, yeah, the second hit, it's still about the same, I guess. The second hit on base was 1214 times 8, and the new hit is 1387 times 7. So it's probably more or less the same. The release, though, was 1214 times 12. Now it's 1387 times 15, which is fucking massive for PvE and PvP. You get the 3 rune release with the air attack on that second hit, and it chunks. It feels like it's actually worth getting sometimes now. And in PvE, they also upped the speed in which Wheel of Wrath comes out. The second hit comes out faster. And the second hit has a bigger AoE. I don't know if I can hit both of these guys with. Okay, yes I can. But you can hit all the scarecrows here now with the second hit. So yeah, bigger AoE means you'll be able to grind better. All the extra crit rate in PvE, all of the polling. I think Succ Kuno's actually going to be the grind spec now, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, all the lower cooldowns, all the PvE crit rate, the added damage that we've got for PvE, it's kind of really strong now. We'll have to see. I could be wrong. Awakening's got a whole lot, so they might, you might still play Awakening because it's easier, and it still has bigger AoEs and like spin and chain crash and stuff. And they've also gotten a whole lot of buffs. Like over the whole, few weeks that Kuno's been getting changes. But yeah, I you probably won't feel like you're inting by playing Succession anymore. For PvP and PvE. Yeah, that's most of like the major changes. They've done other things, like I said, like that aren't really major. I think I mentioned that Fatal Blow is 4 seconds from 7 now, which is kind of weird. And they've done other things. But those are most of the major changes that I can think. Oh, the one thing is you can Shadow Explosion from melee and get all the hits. It's still kind of wonky. Like if you're standing right on top of them, I don't think you get all hits. Like I was testing it with 3Z earlier. But if you like grab somebody and then Shadow Explosion, you'll get all the hits now. So yeah. I think that's most of the major changes. I wrote it all down on notepads so that I could go over it in a fairly quick manner. But yeah. This basically means our super armor damage is now in Dance Macabre and Flash Slash. I would still like one forward guard damaging skill on Shackles, or forward guard on Explosion and they remove the split damage, one or the other. Just because this is so difficult to use in like melee range and you're a melee character. But yeah, I think will be playable. I think flash changes are huge. For large scale, for 1v1s, for like everything. Like this is massive. Doubling the damage, lowering the cooldown by 6 seconds, and adding like the extra attack speed. The iframe jumps means you can avoid like getting grabbed in flash. It's pretty damn big. Tendon Cutter, you can still essentially use it exactly like it is on live, or you can, you know, now hold W to move forward. So like if you don't like doing the camera turns or whatever, and it's faster, yeah, the teleport does feel a little buggy. From the testing that Breezy and I have done, it's, I don't know, the way it applies the float, sometimes it doesn't feel like it actually hits the guy you teleport to. Um, yeah. Um, I I'm not a big fan of clone changes. Overall, this reduces our SA, and flash slash. If you saw, there's no linger on it at all anymore. Um, they've done a lot of changes with S block, so you, um, for all classes, basically, if your S block or your block just breaks in general, you have 5 seconds where it will not regenerate. This is gonna hit Kunos pretty hard in Node Wars, I think, because you would a lot of time, you know, S block a meteor, or you know, some DK's lobbing damage at you from a, you know, mile away, or a caster is, or Zerkers, especially with all the range damage Zerkers have. A lot of the times you would use S block to absorb some of that, and you know, most of the time you can only take 1 or 2 hits because our block is very, very weak. So, and now if they break your block just doesn't regenerate for 5 seconds. That's gonna hit us pretty hard. Um, I think that these block changes are good for like fighting classes like, you know, 360 SA block classes like Warrior, Valkyrie, and shit like that. But Warrior and Val got their blocks buffed. um, so yeah, another thing worth mentioning is that some classes without grabs, got block break on some skills. Red Moon on Meiwa, for example, now has block break. Not, it doesn't stop your block regenerating, but it does, like, you know, break 10% of your block just for hitting you with it. And you know, with how weak our block is and all the added block break in general, it's is you know, your block is very, very weak now, far weaker than it's ever been, which is saying a lot because our block is very, very weak in general. Um, yeah, they changed our passives, which is why I made this 63 Kuno. This is the last thing. They added a 2%, what's the word I'm looking for? Special attack damage at level 63, which is pretty good. Let me go read the changes that they've done for Kunos. Our passive now gives us 12 AP and 10% all evasion rate instead of melee evasion rate. So if you were like really wanting to build evasion, it's probably not the worst thing in the world anymore as Kuno. I would still suggest going DR. Um, you know, it's a damage meta, honestly, and you're an assassin class. You shouldn't sacrifice your damage for a little bit of tankiness. I don't think you're going to be all that tanky, especially with how much damage you lose by building evasion. And then those new crystals that go in the in your dandy or your whatever, the Alucas, with the 2% attack speed, 7 human damage, and 3 accuracy, those are huge. And if you're building evasion, you kind of need to put Hooms in there. You'd put your Hooms here, you put your Hooms there, you put your Harfias, your special attack evasion, you know, your Elcars and your fucking Vipers. But you can't do that because you really, really want those new crystals. I couldn't find them on labs here, only the old ones. But yeah. Others got some pretty strong like passives, and they said they were toying with the idea of being able to choose, which I really, really like. Like Strikers, for example, got all defense plus 28 and crit chance plus 20%. Now Divios was saying something like it doesn't matter for Awakening because they always have like crit like near max or max anyway, but it's big for Succession because they don't have like crit on anything. I would like kill for that buff. The option to, you know, trade our evasion, like say I don't want the evasion. Like if there was you could pick, your killer training here or something else here, and this would give you, all AP 12 and 20% crit rate or 10% attack speed like Lan has. But I think, you can't give that to Kuno because, you got 10% here, you got 10% from another different passive. Whew, it'd be nuts. Then again, Awakening got a 10% attack speed buff, but it doesn't stack with like Shadow Slash or anything. But you get what I'm saying. The option to choose your own passives to some degree would be far preferable, because if you're an evasion Kuno, you want to build evasion or whatever, fine. I don't. I would take that 20% crit rate because that would add so much damage to Stomp. Not to mention, Foxclaw, Explosion for PvP. Oh, there is another thing I didn't write down. I totally missed. Moonlight. Our tier 3 add-on is a 12-second cooldown, and it has 100% PvE crit rate. Also further improves grinding for both Awakening and Succession. You probably won't have it up every pack because you're going to kill them so fast, honestly. Like, but all the damage between Clone, Explosion, Stomp, and Wheel is going to nuke packs. So, but yeah, it's a huge improvement. I still kind of wish they would remove the stiff and make it SA, but we've been getting so much SA. Well, I shouldn't say so much, but some SA between Dance and Flash Slash. I think the class right now needs like a forward guard damage option, and to put the lingers back on Flash and Clone. Some argue that we shouldn't have the lingers, but I mean, come on, Awakening can literally just fully protected super armor linger with Half Moon alone. They can literally just use Half Moon to stay in super armor because at max rank it's 3 seconds and the linger lasts so long. And if you don't want to, you're a little, because it's a very tight window, you can just now use Lunar Dash and Half Moon to maintain super armors, 100% uptime. And you can iframe with Ghost Step in between. So I don't think that there's really any argument to be made about not adding the lingers back on Clone, Flash, and even maybe Dance Macabre at this point. Because we're down bad when it comes to like SAs in general. But yeah, overall good changes. You get your 3 room releases a lot easier. Your PvE is vastly improved. Your PvP, you actually have an SA damage option. It's a much lower cooldown now too. Good, strong SA engage. Like, it's looking pretty good. There's just a couple things that I want to see changed. For Succ Kuno, Awakening's a whole different story. I think Awakening's in a really good spot. They just might need some damage to keep up with some of these other classes, really. But yeah, really good stuff. I'm surprised. I thought that they were just gonna say fuck Succession Kuno and just make Awakening good and call it a day. But yeah, this most recent patch was like only Succ Kuno. So yeah, really happy about that. Oh, one last thing. They changed Knockback to be 0.7 in terms of CC. So now you could, knock back with a skill and then still apply 2 floats. The reason this is important to mention for Kunos isn't really for Succ Kuno, but for Awakening Kuno. They took the knockback away from Lunatic Discus, extended the forward guard slightly. Yeah, it's really not cool that they did that. If this was full forward guard, I could understand it, but it's still not. But yeah, so this makes Sorcs like Blades stronger, much, much, much stronger, because now they can Blades knock back you KD and KD again, which is absolutely bonkers. Strikers, they have that like forward guard knockback punch thing. I think it's actually unprotected, but that engages stronger now because it's 0.7 now. Any knockbacks, like knockbacks are really, really good. Rangers, they have that knockback bond that they love. They can now use that and then KD again. Like, it's very, very strong. Knockbacks were considered very weak CC because they were just kind of shit. You didn't get any, air attack or down attack modifiers off of them. They didn't last very long. They were longer than stiff, but you didn't get any modifiers. I think now they're very strong. That's the last thing. That's it. Yeah, good stuff overall. Very happy. Would like to see a little more for Succ Kuno and maybe a little more for Awakening, but overall, like if what we have came to live right now, it'd probably feel pretty good. Yeah, good stuff. Thanks for watching. Like or whatever, subscribe, I guess, maybe. So if you want or not. Yeah. Have a good day. How about that?